I stared at my phone in disbelief, the email notification glaring back at me like an accusation. Your flight has been canceled. My heart sank as I read the words over and over, hoping they'd somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. The London job offer, my dream position at Harrington and Shaw Architecture, had an orientation in 3 days. I'd been planning this escape for months. "Mom?" I called out, my voice echoing through our suburban home. "Did you get an email about my flight?" The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. I found her in the kitchen, calmly, stirring sugar into her tea as if she hadn't just derailed my entire future. My brother Ryan lounged at the table, scrolling through his phone with practiced indifference. "Oh, Emma," my mother said, not even looking up from her cup. "I was going to tell you. I had to cancel your flight." "You what?" My voice came out, sharper than I intended. But 6 years of sacrificing my dreams for my family was finally catching up to me. "Your place is here, looking after us," she declared, finally meeting my eyes with that familiar steel gaze that had kept me in line since Dad died. "We need you." Ryan chimed in without looking up from his phone. "Yeah, who else will pay for my new car?" I just nodded silently and went to my room. They thought they'd won until the eviction notice arrived on their door. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. 6 years ago, my father died unexpectedly from a heart attack, leaving behind a modest insurance policy and our family home. I was 22, fresh out of architecture school with job offers in New York and London. My mother fell apart. Ryan was still in high school. Someone had to step up, so I deferred my dreams and took a local position at a small firm in our hometown of Cedar Mills, Pennsylvania. It's just temporary, I told myself. Just until Mom gets back on her feet. Just until Ryan finishes school. But temporary turned into permanent. Ryan graduated, then decided college wasn't for him. He got a part-time job at the local gaming store that barely covered his own expenses. Mom never went back to work, claiming various health problems that seemed to conveniently appear whenever I mentioned moving on. I became the breadwinner, the caretaker, the responsible one. I paid the mortgage, the utilities, the groceries. I drove Mom to her doctor appointments and Ryan to work when his car broke down. I cooked dinner most nights and cleaned the house on weekends. My savings account remained perpetually empty. My credit cards perpetually maxed. Dad had been my champion, always encouraging me to pursue architecture with a passion that matched my own. We would spend hours sketching buildings together, dreaming up impossible structures that defied gravity and convention. "Build something that will outlast you," he'd say. "Something that will tell your story when you're gone." After his funeral, I found a letter he'd left in my childhood sketchbook. "Emma," it read, "never let anyone clip your wings. The world needs your vision. I'll always be watching over you." I kept that letter with me, though its edges grew worn as the years passed and my dreams receded. At Morrison & Klein, the local architecture firm where I landed, I was respected but unchallenged. I designed sensible extensions for growing families, renovations for downtown boutiques, and occasionally, when I was lucky, small sustainable projects for eco-conscious clients. My boss, Walter Morrison, recognized my talent but couldn't offer the opportunities I craved. "You're wasting yourself here, Emma," he told me during a performance review in my 4th year. "You should be designing buildings that push boundaries, not compromise budget decks for the city council." "I know," I said, the admission painful. "But my family—" Walter nodded sympathetically. "Family obligations are important, but so is your gift. Don't let it wither." At home, things only grew worse. Ryan, now 24, cycled through minimum wage jobs, never lasting more than a few months at each. When he wasn't working, he was gaming or out with friends who seemed to share his aversion to responsibility. His room was a shrine to stunted adolescence, posters of video game characters, piles of unwashed clothes, and the lingering smell of marijuana barely masked by cheap cologne. My mother's health problems evolved with the seasons. In winter, it was her joints, too painful for her to work. In spring, her allergies were too severe. Summer brought migraines, fall brought fatigue. The doctors found nothing conclusive, but she collected prescriptions like trophies, displaying them on the kitchen counter for all to see. "The doctor says I shouldn't push myself," she'd say, while I pushed myself to exhaustion working overtime to cover our mounting expenses. My friend Tiffany saw through it all. "Emma, they're using you," she'd say during our rare happy hour meetups. "You're enabling them." "They're family," I'd reply, the excuse wearing thinner each time I used it. Tiffany and I had been friends since college. While I returned home after graduation, she pursued her career in marketing with fierce determination. Now she was the regional director for a major cosmetics brand, with an apartment downtown and a life full of the independence I secretly coveted. "Family doesn't treat each other like ATMs," she'd counter, ordering another round of drinks. "You've done your part. More than your part. It's time to live for yourself." I'd nod, making vague promises to set boundaries, then go home and slide my credit card across the table when Ryan needed new gaming equipment, or Mom wanted organic groceries from the expensive market across town. The debt accumulated. I took out a personal loan to consolidate my credit cards. I dipped into what little savings I had to cover unexpected house repairs. I worked holidays for the extra pay. I turned down dates because I couldn't afford dinner out. My life shrank to the space between work and home, with occasional gasps of freedom when I could steal an evening with Tiffany. Then, 2 months ago, a miracle happened. Harrington and Shaw, an international architecture firm specializing in sustainable design, my passion, opened a London office and needed senior designers. On a whim, I submitted my portfolio. To my shock, they called me for an interview. The video call with their creative director, James Harrington himself, felt like a conversation with a kindred spirit. He understood my vision, praised my technical skill, and didn't flinch when I explained the gap between my early promise and current position. "Life happens," he said simply, "but talent doesn't disappear. We see yours clearly." "You're perfect for our team," he told me at the end of our third interview. "We'd like to offer you the position. Can you start next month?" I said yes without hesitation. The salary was twice what I currently made. The projects were everything I'd dreamed of: sustainable urban housing, green retrofits for historic buildings, net zero community centers. This was what Dad had seen in me, what I had almost forgotten was possible. That night, I told my family, over dinner. "London?" my mother repeated, her fork clattering against her plate. "You can't be serious." "I am. It's an amazing opportunity, Mom. Harrington and Shaw is one of the best firms in the world." "But what about us?" Ryan asked, his tone accusatory. "Who's going to pay the bills?" "I've supported you both for 6 years," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "You're 30, Ryan. Mom's perfectly capable of working. It's time for me to live my own life." The weeks that followed were warfare. My mother's arsenal included guilt. "After everything I've sacrificed for you." Health crises. A mysterious dizzy spell that sent us to the ER, only for tests to come back normal financial emergencies. Leak in the bathroom that required immediate professional attention, which I later discovered was just a loose faucet. Appeals to family loyalty. "What would your father think of you abandoning us?" Character assassination. "You've become so selfish. I raised you better than this." Ryan's approach was more direct. Stealing. My laptop disappeared for 2 days, mysteriously reappearing after I threatened to call the police. Intimidation. Slamming doors, punching walls, standing too close during arguments. Sabotage. Accidentally deleting emails from Harrington and Shaw, forcing me to explain to HR why I wasn't responding, but I held firm. I bought my plane ticket, packed my bags, and prepared to finally start living for myself. Then came the canceled flight. After the initial shock wore off, I called the airline. Yes, Ms. Matthews, the cancellation was processed yesterday at 3:42 p.m. The full amount has been refunded to the original payment method, my credit card, which my mother had borrowed yesterday to pick up some groceries. I sat on my bed, trembling with a rage I'd never felt before. 6 years of suppressed resentment bubbled to the surface. I'd given them everything, my time, my money, my dreams, and they still wanted more. That's when I decided, no more. I called Tiffany. I need a place to stay for a few days, I said when she answered. What happened? She asked, instantly concerned. My mother canceled my flight to London. She what? Tiffany's outrage mirrored my own. Get over here, now. I packed a bag with essentials, grabbed my important documents, and left without saying goodbye. As I drove to Tiffany's apartment, my phone buzzed with texts from my mother. Where are you? We need to talk about this London nonsense. Emma, you're being childish. Come home. Your brother needs a ride to work tomorrow. I turned off my phone. Tiffany welcomed me with open arms and a glass of wine. You're staying here as long as you need, she said. But first, we need a plan. Her apartment was everything my home wasn't. Clean, modern, peaceful. No guilt lingering in the corners, no resentment seeping from the walls. Just space to breathe. I feel like I've been underwater for 6 years, I told her as we sat on her balcony overlooking the city, and I've just come up for air. Then keep breathing, she said, refilling my glass. And let's make sure you don't get dragged under again. We spent the evening making lists and calls. I contacted Harrington and Shaw to explain the situation and ask for an extension. To my relief, they were understanding. Family emergencies happen, the HR director said. We can postpone your start date by 2 weeks. Will that be enough time? I assured her it would be. That night, sleeping on Tiffany's couch, I had the first nightmare-free sleep in years. No dreams of drowning in responsibilities. No waking up with that familiar knot of anxiety. Just rest. The next day, I went to the bank to check my accounts and got another shock. My savings account, which should have had nearly $40,000 from years of careful budgeting, had been drained to just under $500. There were multiple withdrawals over the past 3 months, the bank manager explained, showing me the transaction history. All made with my debit card, all at ATMs near our house. My mother had stolen my card and emptied my savings. Fighting back tears, I asked, "Is there anything I can do?" You can file a fraud claim, but since it was your card used, and I'm assuming, the person had your PIN. I knew my PIN was my father's birthday. Everyone in my family knew it. I understand, I said quietly. When I told Tiffany what happened, she didn't say, "I told you so." Instead, she said, "Call your Aunt Paris." Aunt Paris was my father's sister. She and my mother had never gotten along, and after Dad died, Mom had effectively cut her out of our lives. I hadn't spoken to her in years. "She's a lawyer," Tiffany reminded me, "and she always liked you." I found her number and called. When I explained what had happened, she didn't seem surprised. "I've been waiting for this call," she said. "Your mother did the same thing to your father. Isolated him, controlled the finances, guilt-tripped him whenever he tried to make a decision for himself." "What should I do?" I asked. "Come to my office tomorrow. Bring any financial records you have. We're going to fix this." Aunt Paris's law office was in a converted Victorian house downtown. She hugged me when I arrived, then transformed into the formidable attorney she was known to be. She looked like my father. Same strong jawline, same kind eyes that turned sharp when focused on a problem. Seeing her brought back a flood of memories from childhood before my mother's control had tightened like a vice. "Let's talk strategy," she said, leading me to a conference room. "First, whose name is on the house?" "Mine," I said. Dad left it to me, but with the understanding that Mom would live there. "Perfect. And the utilities?" "All in my name. I've been paying them." Even better. She smiled grimly. Here's what we're going to do. Over the next few days, I became someone I didn't recognize, someone stronger, someone who fought back. With Aunt Paris's guidance, I, filed a police report about the stolen funds, initiated the process to terminate all utility services to the house 3, contacted a locksmith to change the locks on a specific date 4, filed for formal eviction of my mother and brother, called Harrington and Shaw and booked a new flight to London. Is this too harsh? I asked Aunt Paris after we filed the eviction paperwork. Emma, she said, placing her hand over mine. Your mother and brother have been financially abusing you for years. They stole your money. They tried to steal your future. This isn't harsh. This is consequences. The legal terms Aunt Paris used, financial, abuse, elder exploitation, though I was hardly elderly, fraud, gave shape to what I'd experienced. It wasn't just family dynamics or temporary hardship. It was systematic exploitation. Your father would be proud of you, Aunt Paris said as we left the courthouse. He always said you were the strongest of all of us. I think he was right. While staying at Tiffany's, I ignored the barrage of calls and texts from my family. Instead, I focused on preparing for London. I opened a new bank account at a different bank. I forwarded my mail to Tiffany's address. I sorted through my possessions, deciding what to take and what to leave behind. Tiffany helped me shop for a new professional wardrobe, clothes that weren't stretched thin from years of use, that represented the person I wanted to become rather than the person I'd been forced to be. Think of it as armor, she said, as I tried on a tailored blazer that made me stand straighter, look stronger. For the battles ahead. I took daily walks around the neighborhood, reacquainting myself with the simple pleasure of movement without purpose. Not rushing to work, not running errands, just existing in the world as myself. You look different, Tiffany observed one evening as we cooked dinner together. Lighter. I feel different, I admitted, like I'm becoming myself again. A week after I left home, the formal eviction notice was delivered. That's when the real drama began. My phone exploded with messages. How could you do this to your own mother? We're family. You don't evict family. You're just like your father, selfish and heartless. That last one from my mother hit a nerve. Just like your father had always been an insult in our house. But now I wondered if it might actually be a compliment. I called Aunt Paris. Mom, says I'm just like Dad. Was he really selfish? There was a long pause before she answered. Your father was the most generous man I've ever known. Too generous. He gave your mother everything, and she took and took until there was nothing left of him. Then why did she always make him sound so terrible? Because he finally stood up to her in the end. He was planning to leave her, Emma. That's why he changed his will and left the house to you directly. He knew what she was. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. He loved you so much, Aunt Paris continued, her voice softening. He was so proud of your talent, he wanted to protect you from what he'd experienced. I think he hoped that by leaving you the house, he was giving you power she couldn't take away. But he didn't anticipate how she would manipulate your love for him and for her to keep you under her control. That night, I read through my father's old letters to me, seeing them with new eyes. The encouragement to pursue my dreams, the suggestions to study abroad, the constant reminders that I was capable and strong, they weren't just fatherly pride. They were lifelines he was throwing me, hoping I'd use them to pull myself free. The utilities shutoff was scheduled for Monday. The locksmith was booked for Tuesday. My flight to London was for Friday. The timing was perfect, a clean break. On Monday night, my mother left a voicemail that actually made me laugh. The power is out, and the water too. I had to go to Linda's house just to charge my phone. Something is seriously wrong with this neighborhood. You need to come home and fix this, Emma. It's your responsibility. She still didn't get it. She still thought she could control me. Tuesday afternoon, I went back to the house with Tiffany and a police escort, Aunt Paris's suggestion, to collect the rest of my belongings. My mother and Ryan were on the front lawn, looking shell-shocked. As the locksmith finished his work, a small pile of their hastily packed bags sat on the sidewalk. "You can't do this," my mother said when she saw me. "This is my home." "Actually, it's not," I replied, handing her the property deed with my name on it. "You have 30 days to find a new place. I've arranged for you to stay at the extended stay hotel until then. It's paid for." "You're paying for a hotel but throwing us out of our home? That makes no sense," Ryan shouted. "I'm not throwing you out. I'm taking back what's mine, and after the 30 days, you're on your own." My mother's face transformed from shock to the calculated vulnerability I'd seen her use countless times. Eyes wide, lips trembling, shoulders slumped. It was the expression that had kept me in line for years, the one that made me feel like the monster whenever I considered my own needs. "Where are we supposed to go?" she demanded, voice quavering perfectly. "After everything I've done for you, I gave up my life to raise you, and this is how you repay me?" "You didn't give up your life," I said calmly. "You took mine instead, and I'm taking it back." Ryan stepped forward, using his height to try to intimidate me as he had so many times before. "You think you're so much better than us? Without us, you'd have nobody. You'd be all alone with your stupid buildings and your stuck-up friends." The old Emma would have backed down, apologized, tried to make peace. But I wasn't her anymore. "Being alone sounds pretty good right now," I replied, not backing up an inch. "Better than being used." As I walked past them toward the house, my mother grabbed my arm. "You wouldn't have anything without us. We made you who you are." I looked at her hand on my arm, then into her eyes. "You're right. You made me strong enough to walk away." Inside, the house felt different, smaller somehow. The furniture I'd paid for, the renovations I'd financed, the utilities I'd maintained, all of it had been a cage I'd helped build around myself. With Tiffany's help, I packed my remaining clothes, my architecture books and supplies, and the few keepsakes I couldn't bear to leave behind, mostly photos of my father and me. I left my furniture, my TV, my kitchen appliances. They were just things, anchors I no longer needed. In my mother's bedroom, I found something unexpected, a locked box in the back of her closet. The key was hidden exactly where my father used to hide spare keys, taped under his nightstand drawer. Inside were documents I'd never seen before. My father's journal, letters from Aunt Paris that had never been given to me, and most surprisingly, a separate life insurance policy naming me as the sole beneficiary. A policy worth $250,000 that I'd never received. The journal entries broke my heart. April 15th, 2016. Told Diane I want a divorce. She threatened to turn the kids against me, said she'd make them believe I abandoned them. I don't know what to do. May 2nd, 2016. Met with Paris. To change my will, making sure Emma gets the house. Ryan will be okay. He's too much like his mother, but Emma needs protection from them both. She's too giving, too trusting. June 10th, 2016. Chest pains again today. Doctor says it's stress, but it feels worse. Made arrangements for the insurance policy. Paris knows about it. If anything happens, she'll make sure Emma gets it. I need to know she'll be taken care of, that she'll have a chance to get away if she needs to. He died 3 weeks after that last entry. I called Aunt Paris immediately. "I suspected something like this," she said after I told her what I'd found. "Bring everything to my office. This changes things." And it did. The journal detailed my father's plan to divorce my mother. The letters from Aunt Paris warned him about my mother's spending and manipulation. And the insurance policy, which had apparently been paid out years ago, had been deposited into an account I knew nothing about. With Aunt Paris's help, we traced the money My mother had taken it all, using forged signatures and a fake power of attorney document. The evidence was damning. "We have two options," Aunt Paris explained. "We can pursue criminal charges for fraud and forgery, or we can settle this privately." "What would a settlement look like?" I asked. "She returns what's left of the money, signs legal documents admitting what she did, and stays away from you permanently. In exchange, we don't have her arrested." I thought about it. Despite everything, the idea of my mother in prison made me uncomfortable. "Let's try the settlement first." The meeting at Aunt Paris's office was tense. My mother came alone. Ryan had apparently abandoned her when the money ran out. She looked older than I remembered, more vulnerable without her usual power over me. "You've always been ungrateful," she started, but Aunt Paris cut her off. "This is not a discussion, Diane. This is an offer, the only offer you're going to get. The evidence was laid out, the settlement terms explained, the choice made clear. Sign or face charges." For a moment, I saw something unfamiliar in my mother's eyes. Fear. Not the manufactured fear she used to manipulate, but genuine terror at the consequences of her actions. For the first time, I wondered if she truly understood what she'd done, not just to me, but to herself. "I did what I had to do," she said quietly. "You don't understand what it's like to be left with nothing, to have to fight for everything." "You weren't left with nothing," I countered. "You had 2 children who loved you, a house that was paid for, community support. You chose to take more." She looked at me for a long moment, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. Then she signed. As it turned out, only about $30,000 of the insurance money remained. It would be transferred to me immediately. The house would be sold, with all proceeds going to me, and my mother agreed to no contact unless initiated by me. As she stood to leave, she looked at me one last time. "He never loved you like I did," she said. I smiled sadly. "That's the first true thing you've said. He loved me better." The days before my flight passed in a blur of preparations. I set up a real estate agent to handle the house sale. I packed and repacked my suitcases. I said goodbye to Walter and my colleagues at Morrison & Klein, who threw me a small farewell party. "We always knew you were destined for bigger things," Walter said, raising a toast. "London won't know what hit it." The night before my departure, Tiffany and Aunt Paris took me to dinner at the nicest restaurant in town. We drank champagne and talked about everything except my mother and brother. "To new beginnings," Aunt Paris toasted, "and to family, the real kind. To freedom," Tiffany added, "and to finally living your dream." "To Dad," I said quietly, "for making it possible." My new life began that Friday as my plane took off for London. I felt light, as if I'd set down a burden I'd been carrying for years. The money from the insurance and eventually the house sale would give me a fresh start. The position at Harrington & Shaw would give me the career I'd always wanted. But the most valuable thing I gained was freedom. Freedom from guilt, from manipulation, from the weight of toxic love. London welcomed me with its characteristic mix of ancient and modern, a city constantly reinventing itself while honoring its past. My flat was small but charming, in a converted warehouse with exposed brick walls and massive windows that flooded the space with light. On clear days, I could see the Thames. My first day at Harrington & Shaw felt like coming home. My colleagues were talented, passionate, and refreshingly straightforward. No manipulation, no hidden agendas, just creative minds working together to build something meaningful. James Harrington took me to lunch that first week. "We're glad you made it," he said. "We were worried when we heard about your family situation." "So was I admitted. "But I had help." "Good friends are invaluable," he agreed, "and now you have a few more." The work challenged me in ways I'd missed for years. I was assigned to a team developing eco-friendly housing for a redevelopment project in East London. My ideas weren't just welcomed, they were built upon, expanded, improved through collaboration. I remembered what it felt like to be part of something larger than myself, something that would outlast me. My first paycheck arrived, and for the first time in 6 years, it was completely mine. No mortgage payment for a house I didn't live in. No utilities for people who exploited me. No extra to cover my brother's latest emergency. Just money I had earned, to spend or save as I chose. I cried when I saw the balance in my account, not from joy, but from the sudden realization of how long I'd been drowning. My first weekend in London, I visited a small cafe near my new flat. As I sipped my coffee and watched people pass by, my phone buzzed with a text from Tiffany. "How's the other side of the pond?" I smiled and typed back, "It's exactly where I'm supposed to be." Sometimes family isn't who you're born to, but who helps you become who you were meant to be. Tiffany, Aunt Paris, my new colleagues at Harrington and Shaw, they were my family now. And the strongest foundation for my future was the knowledge that I had survived, escaped, and could finally build a life that was truly mine. As for my mother and Ryan, I heard through Aunt Paris that they moved to a small apartment in a neighboring town. Ryan eventually got a full-time job. My mother started dating a wealthy widower. Life went on for them, as it does, and life went on for me too, richer, freer, and entirely my own. 3 months into my London job, I was assigned my first major project, designing a women's shelter with sustainable features and security built into its very bones, a safe place for people who needed to escape and start over. "Why did you become an architect?" My project partner asked me over lunch one day. I thought about our house back in Pennsylvania, about the walls that had both protected and imprisoned me, about the doors I'd finally found the courage to walk through. "I build spaces where people can feel safe," I said, "because I know what it's like when home is the most dangerous place in the world." On the 1-year anniversary of my escape, I received a letter from Ryan. It was short, just a few lines. "Emma, I'm sorry. Mom's still mom, but I'm trying to be better. I'm working full-time now and seeing a therapist. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know. Ryan." I didn't respond immediately. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend easily. But I saved the letter. Perhaps someday I'd be ready to write back. The house sold for more than expected. I used some of the money to take Tiffany and Aunt Paris on a vacation to Italy, a thank you for saving me in more ways than one. The rest I invested, a safety net I hoped never to need, but was grateful to have. In my second year at Harrington and Shaw, I was promoted to lead designer on several key projects. My work was featured in architecture magazines. I spoke at conferences about sustainable design. I mentored younger architects. I dated occasionally, learning slowly to let people in without fear of being consumed. And sometimes, on clear nights, I'd sketch buildings just for myself, impossible structures that defied gravity and convention. Just as Dad and I used to do, build. "Something that will outlast you," he'd said. "Something that will tell your story when you're gone." I was finally doing just that, not just with bricks and steel and glass, but with choices that honored his memory and my own worth. I never looked back after that. Some family ties aren't meant to bind us. They're meant to be broken so we can finally be free.